When I was in middle school, one of my favorite books was Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose. The book, which was later adapted into a TV series, focuses on the lives of soldiers of a single airborne infantry company during World War II. As a kid, something that really stood out to me in the book was the mentioning of how out of all of the nationalities and ethnic groups that U.S. soldiers encountered, the average G.I. Joe found that the people he liked the best, identified most closely with, and enjoyed being with were the Germans. Clean, hardworking, disciplined, educated, middle class in their tastes and lifestyles, the Germans seemed to many American soldiers as just like us. At the time, this kind of blew my mind that those I thought were supposed to be the enemy were so well liked. That's why the few pages discussing U.S. soldiers' opinions of Germans stuck with me all these years. But today, I think I at least partially understand why Americans like them so much, and why the two cultures are so similar. It's widely assumed that the largest ethnic group in the U.S. is English. However, German ancestry is the most prevalent, with around 50 million Americans claiming full or partial German descent. The first significant wave of German immigrants arrived in the late 17th century, primarily settling in Pennsylvania, New York, and Virginia. Driven by a desire for religious freedom and economic opportunities, many were Mennonites, Quakers, and other religious dissenters facing persecution. Pennsylvania, in particular, attracted them with William Penn's promise of religious tolerance and land availability. In the 19th century, economic hardship and political unrest led to a massive influx of immigrants. The 1848 revolutions alone brought nearly 1 million Germans, creating the German Belt from Pennsylvania to the Oregon coast. But before I dive into the history and significant contributions of German Americans, I want to explain that one of the reasons I wanted to make this video was to learn about my own heritage, including if I have any German ancestry. So I used today's sponsor, MyHeritage, to help. I started with what I knew about my family tree and uploaded a few photos to their profiles. Here's a picture of my grandmother and my great-grandparents, and another picture of me and my great-grandfather. From there, I've so far been able to expand my family tree going back 10 generations in some branches, thanks to their 19+ billion historical documents on file. For example, here's a census that lists my grandfather and great-grandfather, which is pretty cool because I had forgotten where his childhood home was. After adding a few dozen family members or so, I've been able to build my tree even faster with their Instant Discoveries feature, which essentially does all of the work for you. But I haven't been able to find anyone with what I recognize as a German last name, other than maybe Fulcher, which has Germanic origins and was brought to the British Isles by the Normans in the 11th century. So it's unlikely I have much, if any, German in me. Unrelated, but it's also really cool that MyHeritage was able to confirm what my family has always told me. Phil Jefferson is one of my ancestors. This is Thomas Jefferson's uncle and brother of Peter Jefferson. If you sign up with MyHeritage using the link in the description below, you can get a 14-day free trial and research your own heritage with all the cool features MyHeritage has to offer. Thank you, MyHeritage, for sponsoring this video. German immigrants have made numerous significant cultural contributions to the United States across various fields. In the realm of food and beverage, they introduced lager beer, leading to the establishment of many breweries such as Anheuser-Busch, Coors, and Miller. And they also popularized foods like sausages, sauerkraut, and pretzels. German cuisine also brought the concept of the deli to America. Festivals and traditions like Oktoberfest, which was originally a Bavarian festival, have become widespread across America, featuring German music, food, and beer. German immigrants also introduced several Christmas traditions, including the Christmas tree, Advent calendars, and Santa Claus. In education and research, the concept of kindergarten was brought to the U.S. by Germans, and many German scientists and academics, including Albert Einstein, contributed significantly to various fields. German immigrants were also active in the labor movement, advocating for workers' rights and better working conditions, and played a role in the formation of labor unions and social reforms. Many German immigrants were involved in the abolitionist movement, fighting against slavery and for civil rights. In 1688, 5 years after its founding, Germantown, often considered the first German settlement in what became the United States, was the site of the first formal anti-slavery protest in America. The list of German influences on American culture could go on forever. German immigrants and their descendants have largely assimilated into American culture. Over generations, they adopted English as their primary language and integrated into the broader American society, often blending in with other ethnic groups. This is at least partially because during World War I and II, there was significant anti-German sentiment in the United States. During World War I, school, food, street, and town names were changed, and music by German composers was dropped from concert programs and weddings. German-American businesses and homes were vandalized, and individuals accused of being pro-German faced violent attacks, including tar and feathering. German-language newspapers closed, books were burned, and speaking German could lead to threats and boycotts. German classes were discontinued and often outlawed, effectively ending the tradition of German language and literature in the U.S. Before World War I, 25% of American high school students studied German. By 1922, that figure had plummeted to 0.6%. President Woodrow Wilson criticized hyphenated Americans for divided loyalties, and government officials pressured citizens to declare themselves solely American. Many German Americans responded by changing their businesses and personal names to sound less German. Ironically, thousands of German Americans proved their loyalty by joining the military and fighting against the country from which their ancestors originated. Prominent members of the U.S. military with German ancestry included John J. Pershing, whose family name had been anglicized. Pershing was the commander of the American Expeditionary Forces during World War I and is the only American to be promoted to General of the Armies during his lifetime, the highest possible rank in the United States Army. Another notable example is Dwight D. Eisenhower, also with an anglicized last name. Eisenhower served as the Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe during World War II and later became President of the United States. While German Americans were fighting for the United States during World War I and II, the United States government interned German nationals and some German Americans due to fears of espionage. During both wars, thousands of Germans were classified as enemy aliens, required to register with the government, and faced restrictions on their movement and activities. Families were often separated, and internees faced loss of property and livelihood. After World War II, Germany underwent a period of intense reflection and reckoning with its role in the war and the Holocaust. This collective guilt and the desire to move away from the past likely influenced German immigrants and their descendants to avoid drawing attention to their heritage. German culture traditionally values order, discipline, and conformity. This has led to Germans being stereotypically described as rule followers. However, this may have ultimately caused individuals to quickly assimilate into U.S. culture and avoid actions that might be seen as disruptive or nonconforming, such as overtly promoting ethnic heritage. The stigma associated with being German American has long faded, and celebrations of this heritage are being rekindled. In 1983, President Ronald Reagan declared October 6th as German American Day to commemorate the 300th anniversary of German immigration to America, marking the founding of Germantown in 1683. Oktoberfest is widely celebrated across the country, and the German language is being reintroduced into schools, although it may never reach the prevalence seen before the World Wars. Additionally, German is the third most popular language studied in 13 states on the Duolingo app. The contributions of German Americans have profoundly shaped the cultural and social fabric of the United States, though they are not always obvious. From the introduction of beloved foods and traditions, to significant impacts in education, science, and the arts, to less tangible influences such as a strong drive and work ethic, the legacy of German Americans is woven into the very tapestry of the nation. And that's all for this video. Thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube members for supporting the channel, and thank you all for watching. And don't forget, if you sign up using my link, you can get a 14-day free trial and research your own heritage with all the cool features MyHeritage has to offer.